Hello everyone, am I audible to all? Hello Lekpriya, hello Trisha, hello Akshaya, hello Jivita. So, shall we start today's session? So, should we start now? Okay then, I think I am audible to all. So, let us start then. Alright. So, in this module, we are going to cover neural control and coordination. So, starting with question number 1. Destruction of the anterior horn cells of the spinal cord would result in loss of option A, integrating the impulses, option B, sensory impulses, option C, voluntary motor impulses, and option D, commissural impulses. So see, this is the diagram of the spinal cord. To answer this question, you need to know about the dorsal and the ventral root. So this is the structure of the spinal cord. So in the spinal cord that is present at the front side, that is known as the ventral part, and the posterior part is known as the dorsal part. So here the ganglion for the, yes Trisha, you are saying it's option C. Let's see. So in the, this is the ventral part and here it is the dorsal part. So in the ventral part there are neurons which regulate the voluntary movements. So the neuron from this ventral part, they give the fibers that control the voluntary movement, and in the dorsal part the nerve comes, and this nerve, they take with them the sensory impulses, and that is why if you have any destruction of this anterior horn cell, the voluntary movements will be compromised. And if the question was that if there is destruction of the dorsal root, then the sensory impulse would have been the answer. So yes, all of you are absolutely correct. The correct answer is option 3, voluntary motor impulses. Now coming to question number 2. Given below is a diagrammatic cross section of a single loop of human cochlea. Which one of the following options correctly represent the name of the 3 different parts? So this is the structure of the cochlea, and you have to identify the parts A, B, C and D. So see, this is the skull bone. Okay, this is the skull. In this skull a cavity is present, and in that cavity a membrane is present, and the name, and that membrane is like a tube. It is like a tube. So this tube is known as scala media, and the lower part, that is known as the scala tympani, and the uppermost part is known as the scala vestibular. Okay, all of you are saying that option is option A. So let's see. So this is the, I remember it as TMV, that is tobacco mosaic virus. So here in this scala media, it is filled with a fluid that is known as endolymph, and this media and this vestibuli and the tympani, they are filled with the perilymph. So option A should be perilymph, as you all said, and C should be the endolymph, and this is D is the hair cells, sensory hair cells, and B, it is the tectoral membrane. So if you apply this in the option, then you will know that the correct answer is option A. Yes Trisha, the correct answer is option A. Now coming to question number 3. In a man, abducens nerve is injured. Which one of the following functions will be affected? Option A, movement of the eyeball. Option B, swallowing. Option C, movement of the tongue. And option D, movement of the neck. So what do you mean by the abducens nerve? So which nerve is it? So abducens nerve, it is the nerve number 6. It is the sixth cranial nerve, and this sixth cranial nerve, it supplies lateral rectus muscle. Lateral rectus is a muscle of the eyeball. So if you cut this abducens nerve, then the supply to the lateral rectus, it will be gone forever, and that is why you will not be able to control some movement of the eyeball. All right. And if I talk about the other options, then the movement of the tongue, it is controlled by the hypoglossal nerve. And I can say that the movement of the neck, it can be, you can write the answer as spinal accessory nerve. It is because the muscle, that is the sternocleidomastoid, it is the muscle that control the movement of the neck. Okay, this muscle that is getting taut, it is the sternocleidomastoid, and it is supplied by the spinal accessory nerve. And swallowing, it can be controlled by the vagus nerve, or it is voluntary also, the initial part. Hence the correct answer, yes Jivita, the correct answer is option 1, that is the movement of the eyeball. Now coming to question number 4. Pacinian corpuscles which occur in the skin are: option A, free sensory nerve endings. Option B, specialized cells at the end of the sensory nerve fiber. Option C, a type of gland. And option D, encapsulated pressure receptor deep in the dermis. So Pacinian corpuscle is kind of a receptor, and it has been asked several times in the examination. So what is its function? The Pacinian corpuscle, it is the receptor that is present deep in the dermis, and the major function for which the Pacinian corpuscle is present is for the pressure. It senses the pressure. If you apply any pressure on your hand, then that pressure, it will be sensed by the Pacinian corpuscle, and it is the function of the Pacinian corpuscle. And the other receptor that is also asked in the examination, it is the free sensory nerve endings. The free sensory nerve endings, it senses the pain and the temperature part. Yes, very well said Jivita, it is option D. Whereas there are two more receptors, they are the Meissner's corpuscle and the Merkel's disc, and both of them, they sense the touch. And the Ruffinis corpuscle, it is also present in the deep dermis, and it senses the dermal stretch. When you stretch the skin, it is sensed by the Ruffinis corpuscle, and it is also present in the deep dermis. So as the Jivita said, the correct answer is option D. Now coming to question number 5. The membrane that gives us the ability to discriminate the different pitches of the sound is: option 1, round window. Option B, tympanic membrane. Option C, tectoral membrane. And option D, the basilar membrane. So earlier we have seen the structure of the cochlea, isn't it? In the cochlea, we have seen that the uppermost part here, it was known as the scala vestibuli. Alright, the middle part is the scala media, and the lowermost part is the scala tympani. On the media, the basal part is known as the basilar membrane, and the above, it is known as the Reisner's membrane. And over the basilar membrane, there is a structure, and that is known as the organ of Corti. Organ of Corti. And organ of Corti, it is the receptor that senses the sound in the atmosphere. So the main region that senses the sound in this all structure, it is the basilar membrane. So this basilar membrane that you can see here, it is like a piano. So this basilar membrane that you can see here, it is like a piano, and in this piano, the initial part, See, this is the basilar membrane. This is how it looks like. The initial part here, it senses high frequency, and at the apex it senses the low frequency, and that is why it is important for discriminating the various pitches, because the pitch is related to frequency, and hence the correct answer would be option D. Yes, Jivita, it is option D. And the other thing that was asked in the examination, it is the helicotrema. Helicotrema is this region that you can see here. Helicotrema is the region where scala media connects with the scala vestibuli, connects with the scala tympani. So that is the helicotrema. And you know that with the age, the old people, they have hearing defect, isn't it? Because it is because with the age, the flexibility of the basilar membrane, it decreases, and that is why with the sound the basilar membrane doesn't move, and because it doesn't move, the hair cells also they do not move at all, and that is why with as the age increases, the hearing power of the old people that decreases. It was also asked, so it is option D. Now coming to question number 6, assertion. Presence of the myelin sheet increases the rate of conduction of the nerve impulse. Reason: ionic channels, they are absent in the area covered by the myelin sheet. Therefore, depolarization occurs only at the nodes of Ranvier, and it results in the saltatory or jumping conduction. And the options are A, both assertion and reason are true, and the reason is explaining the assertion. Option B, both assertion and reason are true, but the reason is not explaining the assertion. Option C, assertion is true but the reason is false. And option D, both assertion as well as the reason, they are false. So we know that in the nerve there is a specialized structure that is known as the myelin sheet, isn't it? So because of this myelin sheet, so this is this cell body. Cell body has the dendrites. Dendrites are the smaller branches, and from the cell body a longer branch arises, and that branch is known as the axon. And around the axon, here the myelin sheet is present. So this is the myelin sheet, and in between areas, here it is the nodes of Ranvier. It is the region where myelin sheet is absent. And what is the function of the nodes of Ranvier? See, in the nerve, current has to pass. So tell me that when can you move or when can you reach a destination earlier? If you take larger steps or if you take small steps? Obviously, if you take if you take larger steps, you can reach the destination early, and that is why here if the myelin sheet is present, the current takes larger steps, and this is known as the saltatory conduction, and it is the reason that in the myelinated fiber the conduction of the impulses is faster. So yes, we can say that the assertion is correct. Now coming to the reason part, saying that the area, suppose this is the area where the myelin sheet is present, the reason is saying that in this area the channels are completely absent, the ion channels are completely absent, but this is not true, because in this area also some channels are present, but the majority of the channels, they are concentrated in the nodes of the Ranvier, and that is why the reason is false over here. So yes, Jivita, the correct answer would be option C. The assertion is very well correct, but the reason is false, because it is saying that the channels are absent. If in case of absent, here it would have been less, then the correct answer would have been option A, that both are true, and it would have explained the assertion part. All right. Now moving on to question number 7. Assertion. Postganglionic nerve fibers of parasympathetic nervous system have acetylcholine, while the sympathetic nervous system have the adrenaline as the neurotransmitter. Alright, the reason is given that the sympathetic nervous system, it inhibits the peristalsis movement of the intestine, while the parasympathetic stimulate the peristalsis. So let us see. See, you need to know about two things, that is the preganglionic fiber and the postganglionic the autonomic nervous system, we have two arms, and they are the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. And both of them have one preganglionic nerve fiber and the other postganglionic nerve fiber. So here it is the ganglion. So before the ganglion, it is the preganglionic nerve fiber, and after the ganglion, this is the postganglionic nerve fiber. So I should tell you that the preganglionic nerve fiber, it releases acetylcholine, and the acetylcholine in the preganglionic nerve fiber, it is released in both sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. But there is difference when it comes to the postganglionic nerve fiber. In the postganglionic nerve fibers, the sympathetic nervous system, it releases the adrenaline, whereas the parasympathetic system, it releases the acetylcholine. And there is only one exception to this rule, and that is the sympathetic system of the skin. It is releasing acetylcholine instead of the adrenaline, and it can also be asked in the examination. So yes, Trisha, very well said. The correct answer would be option B. The assertion is absolutely true, and you all know that the sympathetic nervous system, it stops the intestinal peristalsis, and hence it is the inhibitor of the intestinal peristalsis, whereas the parasympathetic movement, it helps in the digestion, and that is why it will stimulate the peristalsis. So the correct answer is option B. Now coming to question number 8. If frog's brain is crushed, even then its leg moves on pinpointing, and it is called as option A, simple reflex, option B, conditional reflex, option C, neurotransmitter function, and option D, autonomic nervous system. So what do you mean by a reflex? So we know that, suppose you might have experienced in your life also that when you touch a hot pan, you suddenly or you abruptly, within no time, you just remove your hand from that, isn't it? And that is the reflex action. You do not process in your mind that whether you have to remove your hand from there or not, isn't it? So the movement that is occurring involuntary and not under our control, that is known as a reflex. So when a frog is dead, then also, see, the death means brain death, isn't it? So you cannot think, but the processes that do not involve thinking, they can go on, and that is why if a painful response is given, then also without thinking also the response will occur, and hence this is an example of what? It is an example of simple reflex. So correct answer is yes, Trisha, it is option A. And the other thing about the conditional reflex that was asked is that conditional reflex was studied by whom? So it was studied by Ivan Pavlov. And what do you mean by conditional reflex and what is unconditional reflex? See, when you see food, you start salivating. That is the unconditional reflex. It is the natural reflex. But if there is something attached to that unconditional reflex, like if I ring a bell when I give you food, okay, if I do it several times, then after like more times, after several times, then if I just ring the bell, then also you will start salivating, and that is known as the conditional reflex. Now coming to question number 9. Examine the diagram of the two types of cells, type A and type B, given below, and select the correct option. So this is the two types of cell, and you have to tell that which one is, what is type A and what is type B. So option A, cell A is the rod cell and it is found evenly all over the retina. Option B, cell A is the cone cell and it is more concentrated in the fovea centralis. Option C, cell B is concerned with color vision in the bright light. And option D, cell A is sensitive to low light intensities. So to answer this question, you should know that what is cell A and what is cell B. So if you see this diagram, so this option A, actually this cell looks like this. The actual diagram looks like this of cell A, and this is how the cell B looks like. Okay, so tell me that what does cell A looks like? The cell A looks like a cone, and that is why it is known as the cone cell. And cell B looks like a rod, and that is why it is known as the rod cell. So yes, cell A is a cone cell, and it is concentrated in which region? So in the eye there is a specialized region. So this is the retina. In that retina there is a specialized region that is known as the macula, and in the macula there is a one depression, and this depression in the macula, it is known as the fovea centralis. It is known as, this depression is known as the fovea centralis, and in this region maximum cones are concentrated. So the correct answer is option B. And you also need to know, yes Trisha, yes Jivita, it is option B. And one more thing about the cone is that it is responsible for the daylight or the photopic vision, and the rods, they are responsible for twilight or scotopic vision. And there are three types of cone cell, and they are responsible for red, blue and yellow color, and there is only one type of rod cell. All right, so the correct answer is option B. Now coming to question number 10. The following diagram indicates the reflex arc. Identify the parts that are labeled as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7 and choose the correct option. So this diagram over here, it is a classical figure of a reflex arc. And you have to tell me that what are the components of the reflex arc. Alright. So these are the four options. Option A is saying that 1 is sensory organ, 2 is sensory nerve, 3 is dorsal horn, 4 is interneuron, 5 is ventral horn, 6 is motor nerve and 7 is the effector. Option B says that 1 is the sensory organ, 2 is sensory nerve, 3 is ventral horn, 4 is interneuron, 5th is dorsal horn, 6 is the motor nerve and 7 is the effector. Okay, actually the options are lengthy, so let us cover the answer itself. Okay, so Trisha is saying that it is option A. So let us see. So this is the reflex arc. I told you that the anterior part, it is known as the ventral root. Yes, we have covered that, isn't it? And the posterior part, it is known as the dorsal root, and all the sensory supply that has to come to the body, it goes through the dorsal root. Okay, and all the motor response that the body will give, it comes out through the ventral root. Okay, so from which organ the sense come? It comes from the sensory organ. So yes, the one should be sensory organ. The sensory organ has to be supplied by the nerve, and that particular nerve will be known as the sensory nerve. So option 2 should be the sensory nerve. Okay, this is the dorsal root. And see one more thing, this bulge over here, this is known as, this bulge is known as dorsal root ganglion. Okay, it can be asked in the examination. Then see the third part. I told you the posterior part is the dorsal horn, so the third is the dorsal horn. Then this is the neuron that is connecting both the dorsal and the ventral horn, and that is why it is known as the interneuron. It is because it is between the two neurons. Then the fifth one, it is the ventral horn because it is coming out from the ventral part. Then sixth is the motor nerve, and seventh is the effector organ which will control the movement. So yes, Trisha, the correct answer is option A. Now moving on to question number 11. Retina is most sensitive at which area? So earlier also we have covered about the retina, isn't it? I told you that retina has two types of cells, and they are the cones and the rods. And when I say that we are talking about the sensitive region, it means that we are talking about the distribution of the cones. So I told you that in the retina there is one region in which the maximum cones are present, and that region is known as the macula. And in the macula also a specialized region where more concentration is present, and that specialized region inside the macula, it is known as the fovea centralis. And that is why the most sensitive part and the region where the visual acuity is strongest, that area is the fovea centralis. Okay, yes, Jivita, the correct answer is option D. And the other thing is that this fovea centralis, this depression, is not present in the frog. It can be asked in the examination. And one more thing is that in the in the eye there is one more region. I told you that if the rods and cones, if the cones are concentrated at one region, then there is some region where the rods and cones, I mean the pigments, are completely absent, and that layer where the pigments or the photoreceptors are completely absent, it is known as the blind spot. So why the photoreceptors are absent? It is absent because this is the region where the nerve has to go out. So the optic nerve goes out of the eyeball through the blind spot in that region, and the blood vessels, they enter the eye through the blind spot, and that is why this area has to be empty. Okay, so yes, the correct answer is option D, fovea centralis. And suppose in the option the fovea centralis was absent, and in case here the blind spot would have been the fourth option, then tell me what would have been the correct option for this question? It would be option C, the macula lutea. But in this case, in this question, the correct answer, as you all said, it is option D, that is the fovea centralis. Now moving on to question number 12. Cornea transplant in humans is almost never rejected. It is because this question has been asked multiple times. So for this we need to know a little bit about the transplantation process. So in the transplant, a foreign tissue is transplanted, or it is put inside the human body. Okay, so what happens is that the foreign tissue is put inside, then the immune system has the property that it will recognize the foreign substance and it will try to attack the foreign substance. And what type of cells attack the foreign substance? They are the WBCs. And where the WBCs are present? They are present in the blood. So each and every region where the blood vessel is present, there the WBC will reach, and then this WBC will try to attack the foreign substance, isn't it? But there is one speciality about the cornea, and that is the cornea doesn't have any of the blood vessel, and hence the WBC cannot reach in that area, and because of that the transplant is almost always a success and it is never rejected. So yes, the correct answer is option B, that it has no blood supply, and with it comes again anteriorly and it forms the ciliary bodies, and from the ciliary body a structure arises anteriorly, and that is known as the iris. So you will see that your eyes have a particular color. Some have green eyes, some have blue eyes, some have brown eyes. That is the color of this iris. And then you will notice a black color in the eye, and that color is because of this area in between the iris, and this area is known as the pupil. And then the innermost layer of the eyeball, the final layer, it is known as the retina. So this is the retina. So this is about the eyeball. So for this question the correct answer was option B, that it has no blood supply. Now coming to question number 13. Alzheimer's disease in humans is associated with the deficiency of option A, glutamic acid, option B, acetylcholine, option C, gamma aminobutyric acid, that is GABA, option D, dopamine. So these are the options. Now tell me, what do you mean by Alzheimer's disease? So Alzheimer's disease is a condition where the memory of the person gradually deteriorates. So what is the reason for this? See, yes Trisha, very well said, it is acetylcholine. The Alzheimer's disease, it is due to the deficiency of acetylcholine. So what is acetylcholine? Acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter, and this neurotransmitter, it controls the various activities inside the brain. And one of the activities of the brain is that it can remember things and it can store the information. But because the acetylcholine is absent, this process is hampered, and that is why the person is not able to remember and store things inside his brain. Okay. The other question that can be asked is that Acetylcholine is synthesized from what? So it is synthesized from choline and acetyl-CoA, and this synthesis requires an enzyme, and the name of that enzyme is choline. It is choline acetyl transferase. So this is the enzyme that is present in the cell body, that is present in the axon terminal, and it is responsible for the production of acetylcholine. And the other thing and the degradation of the acetylcholine, it is carried out by another enzyme, and the name of the enzyme that degrades the acetylcholine, it is the acetylcholine esterase. And this enzyme, it is present in the synaptic cleft, and when the function of the acetylcholine is over, this enzyme degrades the acetylcholine and the nerve signal is stopped. Okay. And one more question that can be asked is that similar to Alzheimer's disease, there is one other disease that is related to the brain, and the name of that disease is Parkinson's disease, and the neurotransmitter that is deficient in Parkinson's disease, it is dopamine. It is dopamine. So the correct answer for this question would be option B, that is acetylcholine. And one more fact that you should remember is that GABA is the inhibitory neurotransmitter. Okay, it depresses the function, whereas the acetylcholine, it increases the function, and it can also be asked in the examination. Now coming to question number 14. A gymnast is able to balance his body upside down even in the total darkness because of, see, when you enter inside a room, then also you cannot see the things, isn't it, inside the room. Then also you do not fall because you can balance your body. And why is it so? There has to be a specialized organ that can maintain this balance even if the eyes are not working. So what is that? So if I talk about ear has two functions. First function is hearing, and the second function is to maintain the balance. Here Jivita very well said, you are saying it as it is the vestibular apparatus. So yes, for the hearing purpose, the membrane that is responsible for the hearing purpose, the organ, it is the organ of cortile. It is responsible for hearing, and for the balance, it is the vestibular apparatus. It is the vestibular apparatus. It is responsible for hearing. Okay, I think the diagram is hiding behind, so I will draw it here. So see, the vestibular apparatus has semi-circular canal. It is the first thing, and the other thing that it has, it is the saccule and utricle. Okay, so I think you can see this thing. So this area, this here and this here, this known as the saccule and the utricle. Okay, and apart from that, there are three structures present. Okay, the above hidden part that you cannot see in the screen, this is known as the semicircular canals. Okay, they are present at right angle to each other. It is like one is present on the y-axis, one is present on the x-axis, and the other one on the z-axis. So they are perpendicular to each other. They are present on all the three axes. And at the end of the semicircular canals, there is one swelling present. See this swelling over here, and this swelling is known as the ampulla. And in this ampulla, a specialized receptor is present, and that receptor is known as the crista ampullaris. And in the saccule and utricle, here in the saccule and utricle, another receptor is present, and that receptor in the saccule and utricle is known as the macula. The ampulla, it is present in the semicircular canal, and that is why it is responsible for sensing the rotational acceleration. It means that suppose you are rotating, then that will be sensed by the ampulla. Okay, and suppose you are running, then that the linear acceleration, it will be sensed by the saccule and the utricle from the macula. So yes, Jivita, the correct answer for this question is option A, that is the vestibular apparatus. Now coming to question number 15. Afferent nerve fibers can carry impulse from. Option A, efferent organ to CNS. Option B, receptors to CNS. Option C, CNS to the receptor. And option D, CNS to the muscles. So there are two types of fibers in the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system is made up of the brain and the spinal cord, and all the other nerves in the body apart from this brain and the spinal cord, they are made up of the peripheral nervous system, and they have two type of fibers. One is the afferent fiber and the other one is the efferent fiber. So in our body, so Akshay, you are saying that it is option C. Let us see. Actually, you are right, but the order is wrong. Yes, correct. See, there are some sensory organs that are present in our body. Okay, suppose this is eye. Okay, eye is a sensory organ. We all know that. And the eye, it will receive the stimulus, whatever you will see in the environment, and then after receiving the stimulus, it will have a fiber that will transmit that impulse from the sensory fiber to the brain. And this fiber that travel from the sensory fiber to the brain, that is known as the afferent nerve fibers. And the other fiber that will travel from the brain to the efferent organ. Suppose I am talking about the muscle, then this will be known as the efferent fibers. It will carry the responses from CNS to the effector. The effector can be muscle or the gland. So the correct answer is option B, from receptors to the CNS. Now moving on to question number 16. One function of the parasympathetic nervous system is, so option A, contraction of the hair muscles. Option B, stimulation of the sweat glands. Option C, acceleration of the heartbeat. And option D, constriction of the pupil. So you need to know the function of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system and what is their action on the various system. And the system that is frequently asked in the examination is the eyes and peristaltic activity. So in my school days also, I used to remember the function of sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system as, see, suppose you see a tiger. Okay, so after seeing the tiger, which system will be activated? It will be the sympathetic system. Now tell me, what will be the changes in the body after seeing the tiger? See, after seeing the tiger, your heart rate will increase, one thing. Then you will sweat more. Okay, so in the sympathetic system, see, it is the sympathetic system, and here I will be telling you about the parasympathetic system. Okay, so sympathetic system, I told you that sweating will increase. Okay, so sweating will increase, but in the parasympathetic system it will decrease. Now see, you have to clearly see the tiger, because you should know that how big it is, the tiger is. Okay, based on that your life will be depending, and hence the eyes will broaden up, the pupil will dilate. So the pupil will dilate, and in the parasympathetic the pupil will constrict. Okay, in the peristaltic activity, when we are digesting something, the blood is towards the stomach, but while seeing the tiger you have to run, isn't it? So you need the blood towards the muscles, and because of that the peristaltic activity or the digestion will stop. Okay, because you need the blood for the muscles. So these are the three things that are frequently asked in the examination. So if you see this option, the correct answer for the parasympathetic activity is option D, that is the constriction of the pupil. And if you remember what I told you about the seeing the tiger example, you can remember any function of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. Alright, so yes, Jivita, very well said. The correct answer is option D. Now coming to question number 17. In vertebrates, simple reflex action is, I told you a bit earlier that what do you mean by the reflex action? So reflex action is the action that is not under your control, that occurs involuntarily, isn't it? And the simplest part of the reflex, so reflex action is the nerve mediated spontaneous, automatic and involuntary response in response to a stimulus. Suppose you are touching a hot pan, then the hot temperature is the stimulus, and that is leading to a response, and that response is the withdrawal of the hand. Okay, and this is known as the reflex. And the nervous system and the part of the nervous system that is accompanying this reflex, that nervous system part is known as the reflex arc. And the simplest reflex arc contains only the two neurons. Okay, you need only two neurons for the simple reflex. What are those two neurons? One neuron that will take the sensory signal from the organ. Okay, this is the afferent neuron, and the second neuron that you will need is the efferent neuron, isn't it? This is the efferent neuron. Now tell me, in this is the reflex arc. Okay, this is the reflex. Okay, I hope the diagram is clear to all. Okay, so I told you that this is the afferent nerve and this is the efferent nerve, and this whole thing is known as the reflex arc. Now tell me, you can see how many synapses in this system? You can see only one synapse. So this is that synapse. So only one synapse is present, and that is why the simple reflex action is monosynaptic. So yes, Jivita, the correct answer is option D. I guess Jivita has covered nervous system very well. Okay, so let us see question number 18. Good vision depends on adequate intake of the carotene-rich food. Select the best option from the following statement. Option 1. Vitamin A derivatives are formed from carotene. Option B. The photopigments are embedded in the membrane disc of the inner segment. Option C. Retinol always aldehyde. It is the derivative of vitamin A. And the fourth statement is retinal is a light absorbing part of all the visual photopigments. And these are the four options, and you need to tell me that of these four statements which one are correct. So let us see. The carotene that is the vitamin A, it is the source of the retinal. Okay, and it is involved in the formation of the rhodopsin or the rod cells. And I told you that the rod cells, they are responsible for the night vision, and that is why if the vitamin A is deficient in your body, it will lead to night blindness. Okay, it can be asked in the examination. And all the photopigments, they are formed from two things. One is the opsin and the other one is the retinal. And of these two, the component that is actually absorbing the light, that is the retinal. Okay, it has also been asked in the examination that retinal is the component that is absorbing the light. So first option is correct. Yes, vitamin A derivatives are formed from carotene. Very well said. Okay, and these photopigments, they occur entirely on the surface of the membrane disc. Okay, not just on the inner segment, and that is why this option is incorrect. So second option is gone. Now coming to the other option. So yes, the retinol is the derivative of vitamin A. I told you that it is so. And the fourth part, that retinal is the light absorbing part of all the visual pigments, it is also correct. So yes, Jivita, very well said. It is option A. Now coming to question number 19. Listen this question very carefully, you may be wrong. Okay, see, Bowman's gland, they are located in option 1, olfactory epithelium of our nose. Option 2, proximal end of uriniferous tubules. Option C, anterior pituitary. And option D, female reproductive system of the cockroach. So here I am talking about the Bowman's gland. So do not confuse it with the Bowman's corpuscle. So yes, Trisha, you are saying that the correct answer is option A, that is olfactory epithelium. Yes, very well said. In the olfactory epithelium, a specialized gland is present, and that gland is known as the Bowman's gland. And the main function of this Bowman's gland is that it senses whatever you smell, it is sensed by this Bowman's gland. It is present at the tip of the nose. Okay, at the tip of the nose, Bowman's gland is present, and at the tip, the olfactory nerve, okay, it forms a sheet-like area at the tip of the nose where the Bowman's gland is present, and it will sense all the things that you are taking inside the nose. So the correct answer is option 1, that is olfactory epithelium. And the students confuse it with the Bowman's capsule. And the Bowman's capsule, it is present in the nephron. It is the initial part of the nephron, as you all know. Now coming to question number 20. Which of the following statements is correct for nodes of Ranvier of the nerve? Option A, neurilemma is discontinuous. Option B, myelin sheath is discontinuous. Option C, both neurilemma as well as the myelin sheath both are discontinuous. And option D, it is covered by the myelin sheath. So to answer this question, you should know the structure of the neurons. The neurons are the structural and the functional unit of the nervous system. It means that the whole of the nervous system of your body is made up of neurons. Okay, the neurons has various structure. So it has a cell body. From cell body, a small branches arises, and these small branches, they are known as the dendrites. Okay, so all of you are saying it is option B, that the myelin sheath is discontinuous. Yes, let us see. So from the cell body, one another fiber, long fiber arises, and that fiber is known as the axon. And at the end of the axon, this is the axon terminal. These are the branches are the axon terminal, and this is known as the synaptic knob. Okay. Then on the axon, specialized cells are present, and those cells are known as the Schwann cells. And these Schwann cells, they produce the myelin sheath, and the area where this myelin sheath is absent, that is known as the nodes of Ranvier. Okay, and what do you mean by neurilemma? Neurilemma refers to the plasma membrane of the nerve. Okay, similarly sarcolemma is the plasma membrane of the skeletal muscle. Okay, so as you can see that here the blue color, it is the plasma membrane. So yes, plasma membrane or the neurilemma, it is present, and it is only the myelin sheath that is discontinuous. So yes, very well said Trisha, it is the myelin sheath that is discontinuous. So the correct answer is option B. Now moving to question number 21. Injury to the vagus nerve in humans is not likely to affect option A, tongue movements, option B, gastrointestinal movements, option C, pancreatic secretion, and option D, cardiac movements. So let us see. The vagus nerve is the longest nerve in the body. Okay, the vagus nerve travels almost each and every organ that is present in the abdomen, and that is why it is named as vagus, because the path that it takes is not defined. It is the vague path, and that is why the name is vagus nerve. And what is the function of this vagus nerve? The vagus nerve supplies various organs, okay, like the viscera or the organs of the thorax, abdomen, okay, and it controls the gastrointestinal movements, cardiac movements, and the pancreatic secretion. Okay, so yes, B, C, and D has to be correct. Yes, very well said Akshaya. It is the tongue movements that is not controlled by the vagus nerve. So who covers the tongue movements? It is the tongue movements, they are covered by the hypoglossal nerve. Okay, so it is option A. And parasympathetic nerves, and they are under conscious control. And option D, both sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves, but they are not under conscious control. So I told you that PNS, the peripheral nervous system, they can be divided. It is divided into two parts. One is the somatic nervous system, and the other part is the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system. The somatic system is under our control. Okay, it is under our, in the somatic system we have the control, but the control is absent in the autonomic nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system, it has two limbs. One is the sympathetic nervous system, and the other limb is the parasympathetic nervous system, and all the visceral organ in the body, they are innervated by both the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. And that is why the correct answer, yes, very well said Jivita, the correct answer has. And one more thing that was asked in the examination, that what nerves do what nerves form the sympathetic nervous system. So this system is formed from the thoracolumbar outflow. Alright. Now coming to question number 23. A sagittal section of the human brain is shown here. Identify at least two labels from A to D. So this is the diagram that is showing the human brain. Okay, sagittal section means it is taken in this manner. Okay, in this manner. So this is the sagittal section. So it is A, B, C and D, and you have to identify each one of them. So option A says that A is the cerebral hemisphere and B is the cerebellum. Option B says that C is the midbrain and D is the cerebellum. Option C says that A is the cerebrum and C is the pons, and option D says that B is the corpus callosum and D is the medulla. So let us cover the brain. Okay, the forebrain. Here we will be covering about the forebrain. So these the parts of the forebrain, they are thalamus, hypothalamus, and one more inner part of the cerebral hemisphere. I will talk about it in a while. Okay. So see, the thalamus is the major coordinating center for the sensory and the motor signaling of the body. It means that all the sensory signals that comes from the sensory organ and all the motor signals that arise from the brain and goes outside, it is coordinated by one organ, one part, and that part is the hypothalamus. Okay, then the other part, that part is the thalamus. Now other part is the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is situated below the thalamus, and many questions are asked from the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus, it controls the homeostasis of the body because it controls the body temperature, urge for eating and drinking, and it also contains several group of neurosecretory cells that secrete the hormones. And what are the hormones that is secreted by the hypothalamus? They are the oxytocin and the vasopressin. These hormones are secreted by the hypothalamus and it is put in the posterior pituitary for releasing further. And finally, the third part is the innermost part of the cerebral hemisphere, along with the amygdala and hippocampus. It forms a complex structure, and that complex structure is known as the limbic lobe or the limbic system. And it is very interesting system, and it is because all your sexual behavior or your emotional reaction as well as the motivation for giving the exam or doing anything, it is controlled by the limbic system. So if you meditate, you will make your limbic system stronger. It will be under your control and you will not get emotional easily. So this is about the limbic system. Now let us talk about options A, B, C and D. So yes, option A here, it is the cerebral hemisphere. Okay. Option B here is the thalamus part, that is the coordinating center. Option C is the pons, and option D, it is the medulla. So tell me, what is the correct answer? Yes, Akshaya, very well said. The correct answer is option C. That is, A is cerebral hemisphere or the cerebrum, and C here is the pons. Now coming to question number 24. The human hindbrain comprises three parts, one of which is. So in the earlier question, I told you about the forebrain. Okay, in the forebrain, remember each and every part about the hypothalamus. They are frequently asked in the examination. Now in this question, we will cover the hindbrain. So option A is spinal cord, option B corpus callosum, option C cerebellum, and option D hypothalamus. Obviously, the hypothalamus is not an option because we know that it is the part of the forebrain. Okay, so it is cancelled. Now what are the parts of the hindbrain? Hindbrain has three parts. Okay, and they are pons, cerebellum and medulla oblongata. Alright. Now what is the function of the pons? Pons contain the fibers that interconnect different region of the brain. This is the first part. Then the second part, so see, this is the pons and this is the medulla of the brain, and this is the cerebellum. Okay, here it is the pons, it is the medulla, and it is the cerebellum, and all these three regions they combine and they form the hindbrain. Okay, so the pons is the connection region between different part of the brain. Okay, the second region is the cerebellum, and cerebellum is responsible for balance. So whenever a person drinks alcohol, that alcohol depresses the cerebellum, and that is why he is not able to hold a steady gait and he is imbalanced. Okay, and the third region is the medulla, and medulla is the most vital region of the body, of the brain, and it is because it contains the control center for the respiration, cardiovascular reflexes, and the gastric secretion. So whenever a person is hanged, okay, in the hanging, what happens is that the second vertebra breaks down. So this is the second vertebra. It has a process that is known as a dens, and this is the first cervical vertebra, this is the second cervical vertebra. So when a person is hanged for death, then this dens comes out from the second cervical vertebra and it hits the medulla, and once it hits the medulla, the person dies. It is because he is not able to control the respiration and the other reflexes in the body. So the correct answer, yes Akshaya, very well said, it is option C, that is the cerebellum. Now coming to question number 25. When a neuron is in the resting state, it is not conducting any impulse, the axonal membrane is. So for this question we need to understand the resting membrane potential. So I will be drawing a nerve. Okay, so this is a nerve fiber. So when a nerve is in the resting state, it is more permeable. It is more permeable to which cation? Yes, it is permeable to potassium. So potassium can easily go inside or outside. Okay, and it is impermeable to what? It is impermeable to sodium. Okay, this is the first thing. Now what happens is that, so we know that it is in the resting state, and inside the axon there are some proteins present, and we call that proteins as, so these proteins they are known as the axonal proteins, and the charge of these proteins, it is the negative charge. Okay, and that is why the inner surface of the nerve, it is having the negative charge and the outer surface is having the positive charge, because outside sodium is more. Okay, and inside potassium is more, and this potassium and sodium inside and outside the neuron is maintained by a channel, and that channel is known as the sodium potassium pump. So this is known as the sodium potassium pump. And what is the function of this pump? This pump will push free sodium outside the neuron and it will take in to potassium inside, and this is the reason that inside the nerve 2 potassium is more and outside the nerve sodium is more. So yes, all of you are correct. Yes Trisha, the correct answer is option D. It is more permeable to potassium and it is nearly impermeable to sodium ions. Now coming to question number 26. During the propagation of a nerve impulse, the action potential, it results from the movement of. So we have earlier discussed about the resting membrane potential. Now let us cover the action potential. So this is the nerve. Okay, I told you that in the resting state the nerve is permeable to potassium and it is impermeable to sodium. But when you excite a nerve, suppose you excite this region, once you excite this region, the permeability changes. So this nerve suddenly becomes permeable to sodium. And tell me where the sodium is high? Yes, outside the nerve sodium is high. Okay, outside the nerve sodium is high, and that is why the sodium from outside enters the neuron, and sodium is the positive charge, and that is why once it enters the neuron, the inside of the neuron, it turns positive. Earlier it was negative and now it turns positive. So this is region A, and the part that is just distal to the neuron, suppose this is region A, where the sodium is entering, and this is the region B. It is still resting. It means that inside negative and outside positive. Now tell me in which direction the current pass. It passes from positive to negative, and that is why in this direction, that is in the forward direction, the current moves, and because of this the action potential is generated inside the nerve. So yes, as you all said, it is option D, that sodium ions from the extracellular fluid, they try to move inside to the intracellular fluid. Now moving to question number 27. Myelin sheet is produced by option A, astrocytes and Schwann cells, option B, oligodendrocytes and osteoclast, option C, osteoclast and astrocytes, and option D, Schwann cells and the oligodendrocytes. So we have discussed about the neuron structure, isn't it? And in the structure of the neuron, I told you that the outermost layer of the neuron, it contains a myelin sheet, and myelin sheet, it wraps the axon, and because of this wrapping, it provides an insulation. And when you know that the wire is also insulated, and it is insulated because it should conduct the electricity well, and that is the function of the myelin sheet. Now let us know that what cell makes the myelin sheet. So there are two types of cell. I told you about the CNS and I told you about the PNS. In the PNS, the myelin sheet is made up of the Schwann cells. It is made of the Schwann cells, and the CNS, it is made up of the oligodendrocytes. So there are two types of cell that make the myelin sheet. So the correct answer is option D. And the other option, if I tell you astrocyte, it is kind of a ganglion, and it is also present in the nervous system. Okay, but it is not responsible for the myelin sheet. The other option, that is the osteoclast. Osteoclast, it participate in dissolving of the bone. It dissolves or eat away the bone. It is the function of the osteoclast. So the correct answer, yes Akshaya, it is option D. Now coming to question number 28. Which of the following regions of the brain is incorrectly paired with its function? Option A, cerebellum, language comprehension. Option B, corpus callosum, communication between the left and the right cerebral cortices. Option C, cerebrum, calculation and the contemplation. And option D, medulla oblongata. It is the homeostatic control. So what will be the answer for this question? So we have covered various regions of the brain earlier also. I told you the main function of the cerebellum, what was it? It was balancing us. So the main function of the cerebellum, it is meant for the balance. Now the corpus callosum. So in the humans, this is the cerebral hemisphere. That is, we have two hemispheres. One is the right hemisphere and the other one is the left hemisphere. Both are independent to each other, isn't it? And this need to be connected to each other because the brain has to be connected, isn't it? And this connection is known as the corpus callosum. Okay. Now coming to the cerebrum. The cerebrum, it is which is incorrectly matched. Okay, cerebellum, yes, it is responsible for the calculation and the contemplation. So yes, the it is calculation and the contemplation. And the option D is medulla oblongata. It is responsible for the homeostatic control. So yes, you all are correct. It is option A, that is cerebellum. It is responsible for the balance and not for the language comprehension. So yes, here it is incorrectly marked. The correct answer is option A, cerebellum. And the cerebrum, it is the logical part which is for the calculation and the contemplation. Now question number 29. The Nissel's granule of the nerve cell are made up of. So this is the axon. So in the axon, certain granules will be seen inside the microscope. And this is the dendrites. Okay. And the granules that are seen inside the axon, they are known as the Nissel's granule. They are known as the Nissel's granule. So what exactly is this Nissel's granule? The Nissel's granule, it is the rough endoplasmic reticulum. So the correct answer for this question would be the rough endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, but wait, something more is also there. What is present in the rough endoplasmic reticulum? Okay, the endoplasmic reticulum, it contains the ribosomes also, isn't it? And that is why the next to best answer here would be option A, that is the ribosomes. And because the ribosomes are present over here, what is the function of the ribosome? It is the protein synthesis, and the neurons require to synthesize protein very often, and that is why it contains the specialized granule. And one more point is that the Nissel's granule, they are also present in the dendrites and they are absent in the axon. Okay, and the Nissel's bodies, they show changes under various physiological condition. Suppose if there is any disease or there is any damage to the nerve, that is the pathological condition, this Nissel body, they will start to dissolve and disappear. And what is this process known as? This process will be known as karyolysis, and it is a pathological condition. Okay, just two more questions. Just a last question. Okay, question number 30. A diagram showing axon terminal and synapse is given. Identify correctly the last, at least two of A to D. Okay, so here this is the diagram and you have to identify what is A, B, C and D. So A is saying that B is the synaptic connection and D is the potassium. B is saying that A is the neurotransmitter and B is the synaptic cleft. C says that C is the neurotransmitter and D is the calcium. And D says that A is the receptor and C is the synaptic vesicle. So let us see. So this is the diagram of the nerve. So here A, this is the synapse. The synapse is made up of three structure. So this is the synapse. This part is known as the presynaptic membrane. Then the gap in between, this gap in between, it is known as the synapse, and this region, it is known as the postsynaptic membrane. And over the postsynaptic membrane, the receptors are present. So yes, option A is the receptor. Now B, here the B is pointing towards the neurotransmitter. So B is the neurotransmitter. Okay, now coming to the C part. So B is the neurotransmitter, and the C part here, C is the synaptic vesicle, and D part here, it would be the synaptic cleft, and A, I told you, the receptor. So what will be the correct answer for this question? Yes, it is the option D. Yes, Jivita, it is option D. So this is option D. So we are done for today. I hope it was a nice session for all of you. If there is any doubt, you can post it down, you can comment it down, or else we will be signing out for today. I guess no one is having any doubt. Thank you all. It was really a fun session with you all. Okay, bye.